Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at werewolves.
Werewolves.
Yeah, we're going to be cracking open The Werewolf in Lore and Legend by Montague Summers and really trying to get to the bottom of this legendary creature. We're going to be, hearing about some chilling historical accounts.
Yes.
We're going to be delving into the psychology behind the werewolf myth and exploring the cultural impact this creature has had throughout history.
Yeah, and I think just looking at that cover illustration alone, just that stark image of the werewolf,
right?
You can tell that this is really serious business for Summers, and really for a lot of history. I mean, this is no, romanticized wolf boy kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is about a deep-seated fear.
Yeah. Summers was a Catholic priest and a scholar,
Yeah.
and he really believed in werewolves.
Oh, yeah, he was a true believer.
Yeah, and his book dives into the darkest side of the myth.
Right.
Werewolves as demonic, bloodthirsty forces.
Yeah, for him, it wasn't just a wild animal problem.
Right.
It was really a spiritual problem.
Yeah.
A demonic problem.
Yeah. But before we get into those chilling tales, let's just start with the basics. What exactly is a werewolf?
Yeah, so the classic image, of course, is, the human transforming into a wolf, often under a full moon.
Right.
But the details can be really interesting.
Okay.
Some legends say it's an involuntary curse.
Okay.
Some say it's something that's achieved through rituals or magic.
Oh, wow.
And even the form itself can vary. I mean, is it a full wolf? Is it more of a horrifying human-wolf hybrid?
Right.
So there's lots of different variations.
Yeah, it's that blurred line that's always kind of captivated me. How much of our humanity is lost in that transformation?
Yeah.
Is it a choice? Are we victims of something beyond our control?
Right.
It makes you wonder if maybe these stories are tapping into something deeper about human nature itself.
Absolutely. And the idea is not a new one.
Right.
I mean, werewolf lore stretches way back to ancient Greece and Rome.
Wow.
Just take the story of Lycan from Ovid's Metamorphoses.
Right.
He tests Zeus, the king of the gods, by serving him human flesh.
Yeah, not a good dinner party host.
Not a good way to impress Zeus.
No.
And Zeus, of course, is outraged.
Yeah.
He transforms Lycan into a wolf as punishment.
Wow.
So it's a really powerful example of that ancient belief.
Right.
That transformation could be divine retribution.
Yeah.
You mess with the gods, you might literally become a monster.
Mess with the gods.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how does this idea of divine punishment connect to the later werewolf beliefs, ones that Summers was so fascinated by?
Well, I think it establishes this link between transformation and transgression.
Okay.
The idea that becoming a werewolf isn't just about the physical change, but it's also a moral one.
Oh, okay.
And that's something Summers really emphasizes.
So the werewolf becomes a symbol of succumbing to our baser instincts, our darker impulses.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's not just a wild animal attack. It's about the potential for evil that exists within us all.
Oh, wow.
Waiting to be unleashed.
Yeah.
And that idea becomes especially potent during the Middle Ages.
Right.
I mean, you see this explosion of werewolf trials. Accusations are flying left and right.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about a fear of wolves anymore, was it?
Yeah, it seemed like something else was driving this werewolf mania.
Yeah.
Summers connects it to the witch hunts.
Yes.
That were also happening at the time.
Of course.
Was there a link between these two fears?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Middle Ages was a time of immense upheaval.
Yeah.
Plagues wars.
Right.
People were looking for someone to blame.
Yeah.
And anyone seen as different or as an outsider could become a scapegoat.
Right.
And that included witches and often werewolves.
And we even see that visually, right? I mean, there's that chilling woodcut of a witch riding a wolf.
Exactly.
It's almost like propaganda linking the two fears together.
Yeah, it's a really powerful image that speaks to the anxieties of the time. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see how the werewolf taps into something very primal.
Okay.
The fear of the beast within.
Right.
It's about losing control.
Yeah.
That thin line between civilization and savagery.
Right.
But this fear isn't limited to the Middle Ages, is it?
Right. Seems to resonate across cultures and time periods.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if this fear of the beast within is something inherently human.
Yeah.
Something that, transcends cultural boundaries.
It's fascinating, right? And speaking of transcending boundaries, we can't talk about werewolves without mentioning the infamous beast of Gévaudan.
Yeah.
This creature terrorized 18th century France, killed over 100 people.
Yeah, it was a terrifying case.
Some believe it was a werewolf. Others thought it was a pack of wolves.
Right.
Or maybe even a hyena.
Could have been a hyena.
The Beast of Gévaudan remains a mystery to this day.
Yeah, we have these terrifying illustrations, depicting this monstrous wolf-like creature, but nobody ever definitively proved what it was.
It really highlights how our minds, especially when gripped by fear, tend to leap toward the supernatural.
Oh, yeah.
If we can't explain something, is it easier to just label it a monster?
Exactly. I mean, the werewolf myth becomes this placeholder for the unknown.
Right, yeah.
A way to explain the unexplainable.
Right.
It gives a name and a face to our deepest fears.
Right, and even though science, may debunk a lot of these myths, the fear, that primal instinct to believe, still lingers.
Oh, absolutely.
So even if we don't necessarily believe in literal werewolves today, the myth still holds power.
Right.
It speaks to something deeper, something about our relationship with the animal world,
Yeah.
our own primal instincts.
You've hit on a crucial point there. I think, Summers, with his religious background, he saw a very strict separation between humanity and the animal world.
Right.
Werewolves, for him, were a terrifying violation of that boundary. But if we look at werewolf-like creatures in other cultures, we see a bit of a different perspective.
Right. You mentioned earlier that werewolves appear in folklore all over the world.
Yeah.
What are some examples of those beliefs?
Sure.
And how do they compare to the European werewolf?
Well, for instance, you have the Navajo skinwalkers.
Okay.
They're shapeshifters who can transform into various animals.
Wow.
But unlike the European werewolf, they're not always viewed as inherently evil.
Okay.
They can use their powers for good or for evil.
Interesting.
And their transformations are often tied to spiritual practices and shamanism.
So it's not just about a curse or losing control. It's about harnessing that animal power, that primal energy for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if maybe the beast within isn't something to be feared, but something to be understood, maybe even respected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It challenges that idea that we need to completely suppress our animal nature.
Right.
Perhaps there's a way to integrate it, to find a balance between our primal instincts and our more evolved selves.
Instead of taming the beast, we learn to coexist with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a very different perspective than what we see in Summers' work.
It is, and it speaks to a larger shift, I think, in how we view our relationship with nature.
Okay.
We're not separate from the animal world. We're a part of it.
Right. If we zoom out and look at all these different werewolf myths, from Europe to the Americas and beyond,
Yeah.
are there any common threads that tie them together?
Yeah, I think while the specifics differ,
Okay.
there are definitely some common threads.
Okay.
I mean, the duality of human nature,
Right.
the struggle between civilization and savagery,
Right.
the fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
and this allure of transformation.
Right.
These are anxieties, I think, that seem to be woven into the fabric of human experience.
So maybe the werewolf, no matter what form it takes, ultimately reflects our own internal struggles.
Yeah.
It's a mirror reflecting back our anxieties or desires.
Or it's
Or
like,
fears.
yeah. And it reminds us that, despite cultural differences,
Right.
we share a common thread of humanity.
Yeah.
We all grapple with these questions.
Right.
About who we are, what drives us, what it means to be human.
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as a scary story about a wolfman can lead to such profound insights.
Yeah.
But Summers, as you mentioned before, had a much darker view of werewolves.
He did.
He saw lycanthropy as a moral feeling.
He did. And while we might not share his, theological framework today,
Right.
his perspective raises an interesting question, I think.
Okay.
If the werewolf is a symbol of our darkest impulses,
Yeah.
how do we in the 21st century tame the beast within ourselves?
Right.
How do we navigate those primal urges and anxieties in a world that's constantly, pushing us to our limits?
That is a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of taming the beast, we need to understand it. And that brings us to a point, I think, where we need to dive a bit deeper into the psychology of the werewolf.
Yeah. As we delve deeper into this idea of the beast within, I can't help but wonder if Summers' perspective, while rooted in his time, might be a bit too harsh.
Right.
What if instead of simply trying to tame this beast, we tried to understand it?
Yeah, that's a fascinating point, and it reflects a broader shift, I think, in how we view our relationship with our primal instincts.
Okay.
Summers saw this very strict division
Right.
between humanity and the animal world,
Right.
with the werewolf representing this terrifying transgression of that boundary.
Yeah.
But today, there's this growing recognition that we're not separate from nature. We're a part of it.
So instead of fearing or denying our animal side,
Right.
perhaps we can learn from it.
Exactly.
After all, animals aren't inherently evil. They act on instinct,
Yeah,
on what they need to survive.
exactly. And if we tap into that instinctive wisdom,
Right.
maybe we can find a way to balance those primal urges with our more evolved selves. It's not about suppression, but integration.
Finding harmony, not dominance.
Right.
It's a different way of thinking about the werewolf, not just as a monster to be defeated,
Yeah.
but as a part of ourselves to be understood.
And it reminds us that maybe the real monsters aren't the ones in the stories,
Right.
but the ones that we create in our own minds.
Oh,
Remember how Summers linked werewolf mania to the witch hunts?
gory.
It's a reminder that fear and ignorance can lead to persecution, to scapegoating.
It's like if we can't face our own inner demons, we project them onto others,
Right.
labeling them as monsters to distance ourselves from the darkness within.
Exactly.
And sadly, this isn't just a relic of the past.
No.
We still see this today, don't we?
I do.
The way we demonize individuals or groups we don't understand
Yeah,
that
that-
make us uncomfortable.
Absolutely. It's a recurring pattern throughout history.
Yeah.
But by recognizing that tendency within ourselves, we can start to break the cycle.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has been from ancient myths to modern psychology, from demonic curses to the beast within.
Yeah, and it seems like the werewolf is less about literal transformation
Right.
and more about a metaphorical one.
Right.
It's about confronting our own darkness, our capacity for both good and evil.
You've hit the nail on the head.
I think so.
The werewolf myth isn't just a scary story.
It's not.
It's a reflection of humanity's ongoing struggle to understand itself.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's its most enduring legacy.
Perhaps.
It forces us to look in the mirror and ask those uncomfortable questions about who we are, what drives us, and what it truly means to be human.
And maybe, just maybe, by exploring those dark corners of our own psyches,
Right.
we can find a path toward greater self-awareness and even positive transformation.
So as we go back out into the world,
Right.
consider this.
Yeah.
What does the werewolf myth reveal to you about your own beast within?
Right. How can understanding those shadow selves, not just fearing or suppressing them, lead to a richer understanding of yourself?
Right.
It's a question worth pondering, after all. As we've learned, sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create within ourselves.
Chills. That's a thought-provoking note to end on. Until next time, fellow deep divers.